Hello. I'm fascinated by 5 significances of dance that I see in C.S. Lewis. The first, of course, has to be a wonderful expression of sheer joy. And we get that right at the beginning of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, when Mr. Tumnus tells Lucy about life in Narnia before the White Witch put the whole land under an evil spell. He had wonderful tales to tell of life in the forest, it says. He told about the midnight dances and how the nymphs who lived in the wells and the dryads who lived in the trees came out to dance with the fauns, about the milk-white stag who could give you wishes if you caught him, about the wild red dwarfs, and then about summer when Silenus and sometimes Bacchus himself would visit and the whole forest would give itself up to jollification for weeks on end. It's all things that Lewis develops later in the stories, of course, and it paints an idyllic picture of Narnia that we're given right at the beginning, which makes it seem like paradise. Like all fauns, Mr. Tumnus himself is liable to break into dancing at any moment. In The Horse and His Boy, for example, when Lucy's sister Susan is threatened with a forced marriage to Rabadash, Prince of the Land of Calaman, he comes up with a plan to help her escape. And there's a lovely little scene in which he dances in delight with Susan at his plan to help her escape the ignoble designs of her suitor. And then a little later, while he's taking care of the runaway boy Shasta, he brings in the lad's dinner, half dancing. And then he tells Shasta all about the summer festival and the all-night dances in the forest in Narnia, just as he described them to Lucy back in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. In that story, Mr. Tumnus risks everything for Lucy, of course, and for his pains he's turned to stone in the witch's house. And when he's delivered by Aslan, we see him dancing for joy with Lucy in the court of the witch's broken castle. A moment later, Lucy and the little faun were holding each other by both hands and dancing round and round for joy. The dancing of fauns in moonlit woods was one of Caspian's most memorable experiences of the Narnia that's been forced into hiding in Prince Caspian. And when he encounters them for the first time in his life, they're dancing all round him with such lightness and grace to pipe and drum and a music wild and yet dreamy, at a clearing in the woods called Dancing Lawn. And there are 32 mentions of dance in Prince Caspian, and that's without all the references to Dancing Lawn. And this brings us to another meaning of dance in Lewis, because it's a dance which everyone who wishes can join in, whether they can dance or not. Even Trumpkin the dwarf, with heavier and jerkier movement, and the badger truffle hunter, who lumbered about as best he could. So the dance embodies community and harmony and shalom, and a great shared rejoicing. It's quite significant that the treacherous dwarf Knickerbrick won't join in the dance. He stays apart from it all, ominously silent. Fauns and dwarfs and dryads dance again in the great snow dance at the end of the Silver Chair, to wild music under the moon and the stars. On fine nights when the cold and the drum taps and the hooting of the owls and the moonlight have got into their wild woodland blood and made it even wilder, they will dance till daybreak. I wish you could see it for yourselves, says Lewis. The dryads dance, wild and beautiful and joyous under the moon, their hair wafting behind them, crowned in leaves. There was no dancing in the witch's enchanted underworld earlier in the story. Her earthmen are under a spell, and they just pad about in joyless silence doing her chores. It's a mark of the difference between the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of light. And again, it's a dance of great harmony, as the dwarfs throw snowballs with meticulous precision between the dancers. It's great fun and greatly serious at the same time. You might also see in this a third significance of dance in Lewis as an expression of the romantic wildness that was dear to him, and a wild, unearthly joy. And I won't talk any more about that now because I've looked at it in another video, but it's a wildness under control, the union of wild and the disciplined, which is a kind of otherness to it. In Prince Caspian, when Lucy's woken on the morning of the great wild carnival of liberation across Narnia, she immediately jumps up, her eyes dancing and her feet wanting to dance. Now, the great dance of the universe was a commonplace of medieval cosmology, which Lewis was fascinated by, and it brings us to a fourth significance of dance, cosmic significance. In an essay on imagination and thought in the Middle Ages, he says the medieval model of the cosmos, which he suggests we view as a kind of work of art, is so ordered, so sublime, so festive. The model included the primum mobile, the outermost sphere of the universe, which gave motion to all the rest. And medieval cosmologists had a symbol for it, Lewis tells us, and the symbol chosen is delightfully significant. It is a picture of a girl dancing and playing a tambourine, a picture of gaiety, almost of frolic. And why not? These spheres are moved by love. Their existence is one of delight. The motions of the universe, he concludes, are to be conceived not as those of a machine, but rather as a dance, a festival, a symphony, a ritual, a carnival, or all these in one. In Prince Caspian, the dance, as Dr. Cornelius calls it, of the stars, Tava and Alambil, foretells great good for Narnia. And this idea of cosmic dance becomes hugely important in the Space Trilogy. And towards the end of Perelandra, the second of that trilogy, when the great king of the planet Venus laughs, and everyone can't help but laugh with him, it's suddenly, we're told, as if there were dancing in deep heaven. Some say there always is. And that motif is taken up again a bit later when the king speaks of the future wonders planned for the universe by Mal-Eldil, which is the name for God in that world. And it is the great dance of all things. In an extraordinary visionary moment, which lasts an entire year, the hero of the book, Ransom, sees this great dance in all its many dimensions and its infinite complexity, and yet at the same time its incomprehensible simplicity. It has begun from before always. There was no time when we did not rejoice before his face as now. The dance which we dance is at the centre, and for the dance all things were made. Blessed be he. Then in that hideous strength, the last in the cosmic trilogy, in a transcendent scene, the Oyasa, or Archangel Jupiter, through whom the joy of creation principally blows across the fields of Arbol, descends upon the house at St Anne's on the Hill in the heart of England, and the effect on the guys in the kitchen is wild and crazy dance. In the kitchen, his coming was felt. No one afterwards knew how it happened, but somehow the kettle was put on, the hot toddy was brewed, Arthur, the only musician among them, was bidden to get out his fiddle, and the chairs were pushed back, the floor cleared. They danced. What they danced, no one could remember. It was some round dance, no modern shuffling. It involved beating the floor, clapping of hands, leaping high. And no one, while it lasted, thought himself or his fellows ridiculous. It may, in fact, have been some village measure, not ill-suited to the tiled kitchen. The spirit in which they danced it was not so. It seemed to each that the room was filled with kings and queens, that the wildness of their dance expressed heroic energy, and its quieter movements had seized the very spirit behind all noble ceremonies. And upstairs in the blue room there is holiday, as the great heavenly being descends with roaring, with terror and unquenchable laughter. And Ransom and Merlin, who's also rocked up, are momentarily caught up in the gloria which those five excellent natures perpetually sing. So the effect when this great archangel descends and joins the four archangels who've already gathered is dance and song. And finally, in his theological book, The Problem of Pain, Lewis describes the life of heaven in terms of game and dance. And the great game of self-giving becomes a dance. And when the great master himself leads the revelry, giving himself eternally to his creatures in the generation and back to himself in the sacrifice of the word, then indeed the eternal dance makes heaven drowsy with the harmony. He's quoting Shakespeare. So the fifth meaning of dance that I find in Lewis represents the life of heaven. And not just that. Some theologians speak about the dance of the Trinity. And here, the problem of pain, Lewis sees Christ leading the dance. He goes on, there is joy in the dance, but it does not exist for the sake of joy. It does not even exist for the sake of good or of love. It is love himself and good himself, and therefore happy. The dance is love himself and good himself, and therefore happy. This is what or who we're destined for. God bless you.